Elara Voss stood still in the middle of the alien ship's prison hold. Cold metal walls surrounded her. Chains hung from her wrists and ankles. Her uniform was torn, her face bruised, but her eyes still burned with fire. 2 Zanari guards shoved her forward. "Move, human," one hissed. Its voice was sharp and full of disgust. Elara stumbled but caught herself before falling. "Easy," she said calmly. "You don't want me to trip and hurt myself before the big show, do you?" The guard glared at her and tightened its grip on the chain. Silence. They dragged her down a narrow corridor. Other prisoners, alien slaves from conquered worlds, peeked through the bars of their cells, their eyes wide. None of them dared to speak. They just stared at the human captain being led away. Elara noticed everything. The security cameras. In the corners, the red light above the doors. The hum of the ship's engine vibrating faintly through the floor. Every detail sank into her mind. They entered a massive chamber. At the center was a raised platform. Hundreds of Zanari soldiers and civilians surrounded it, filling the room with noise. The crowd cheered when they saw her. "There she is," one of them shouted. "The weak human. The hero of Earth. Look at her now." They laughed at. The far end of the platform stood the Zanari Emperor, tall and clad in black and gold armor. His crimson eyes glowed as he watched her approach. Elara's chains rattled as the guards forced her to her knees before him. "Captain Elara Voss," the Emperor began, his voice echoing through the room. "So this is the mighty human who dared defy the Zanari Empire. How disappointing." Elara lifted her head slowly and met his gaze. "You sound nervous, Emperor. Are you afraid of a woman in chains?" The crowd roared with laughter at her. Words, but the Emperor's lips tightened. "Bold words," he sneered. "You humans think you're clever. But you are nothing without your toys, your guns, your ships, your machines. Look at you now, no weapons, no power. Just a fragile body waiting to break." Elara smirked. "If that's what you believe, you're making a big mistake." The Emperor stepped closer, his long cloak brushing the floor. "You will kneel, Captain. You will beg. And the galaxy will see humans for what they really are. Weak." Elara tilted her head. "Funny, I was about to say the same about you." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. He raised a hand, and one of the guards struck Elara across the face. The crowd cheered again. Her cheek stung, but she didn't cry out. Instead, she let out a small laugh. The Emperor looked confused. "Why do you laugh?" "You're underestimating me," she replied simply. The Emperor scoffed. "We have disarmed you, human. You have no weapons." "That's where you're wrong," she whispered. For a second, the Emperor froze. Something about the way she said it, calm, sure, almost mocking, made him uneasy. But then he shook his head and turned away. "Take her to the cell," he ordered. "Tomorrow we execute her live for all to see. Let the galaxy watch humanity's final humiliation." The guards grabbed Elara by the chains again. She let them, still smiling faintly, as they dragged her back through the corridor. One of the guards leaned close and snarled, "Why smile, human? You're finished." Elara glanced at him sideways. "Because you're all so sure of yourselves. That's always the first mistake." They reached a dark cell at the end of the hall and shoved her inside. The heavy door clanged shut behind her. She sat down on the floor, her back against the wall, and closed her eyes. For a while, she listened, to the guard's footsteps fading, to the low murmur of the crowd outside dying down. Then she opened her eyes and took a deep breath. From the shadows, a quiet voice whispered, "You shouldn't have said those things to him." Elara looked up. In the corner of the cell, behind another set of bars, sat an alien prisoner. He was thin with gray skin and bright blue eyes. "What things?" she asked. The alien shook his head. "You insulted the Emperor." "Nobody does that. He'll make you suffer." Elara studied him for a moment. "What's your name?" The alien hesitated. "Ralik." Well, Rallick, Ilara said softly, don't worry about me. The Emperor thinks he has won, but he's wrong. Rallick stared at her. You're in chains. What can you possibly do? Ilara's smile returned. Plenty. She reached down and tugged slightly at the chain on her wrist. To Rallick's surprise, the cuff slipped off easily. His eyes widened. How? Humans are full of surprises, she replied. From her sleeve, she pulled out a thin wire she'd hidden during the fight when they captured her. Carefully, she worked on the ankle shackles until they too fell away with a soft clink. Rallick's jaw dropped. You, he whispered. Ilara pressed a finger to her lips. Timing is everything. She moved silently to the cell door and examined the lock. It was advanced Zenari tech, but she'd studied it on the way in, with the wire. She picked at the mechanism until she heard a faint click. The door creaked open. Outside, the corridor was quiet. Ilara turned back to Rallick. Stay here or follow me, your choice. Rallick stood up quickly. I'm coming. Together, they slipped out of the cell and into the corridor. Ilara kept her body low, her eyes scanning the shadows. She knew the guards' patterns, having memorized them earlier. When two guards rounded the corner, she pressed Rallick into an alcove and waited. The guards walked past without noticing them. Once they were gone, Ilara exhaled slowly. Easy. She muttered dot as they moved deeper into the ship. Rallick whispered, Where are we going? Ilara didn't look back. To the Emperor. What? Rallick almost tripped. You're insane. He has hundreds of guards. Ilara glanced over her shoulder and smiled. And they're all looking in the wrong direction. She led him through a service tunnel she'd noticed earlier, barely wide enough to crawl through dot at the other end. They emerged into another hallway, much closer to the Emperor's chambers. Here, the walls were decorated with golden banners and alien carvings. The air smelled richer, warmer. Two guards stood outside the Emperor's door. Ilara pressed herself against the wall and waited when one of the guards yawned and turned slightly away. She moved in a flash. She was behind him, wrapping her wire around his throat and pulling tight. The alien made a choking sound before collapsing silently. Before the second guard could react, Ilara grabbed his weapon and struck him hard across the head. Both guards lay still. Rallick stared in shock. You're not human. You can't be. Ilara knelt down, retrieving one of the alien weapons and checking its charge. No, she said quietly. I'm human. That's why I'm doing this. She stood and pushed the Emperor's door open. Inside, the Emperor sat at a long table, reading something on a glowing screen. He didn't even look up at first. What is it now? Ilara stepped inside and leveled the weapon at him. It's me. The Emperor froze. Slowly he looked up, his crimson eyes wide with disbelief. He began, but she cut him off. You disarmed me, she said calmly. You stripped me of everything you thought made me dangerous. She walked closer, her footsteps echoing. You thought chains would hold me. You thought humans were weak without their machines. The Emperor rose to his feet, but she pressed the barrel of the weapon to his chest. You were wrong, she whispered. Rallick appeared in the doorway, still shocked, still unable to speak. Ilara stared into the Emperor's eyes. You should have killed me when you had the chance, she said. The Emperor opened his mouth to speak, but she fired a single shot into the wall beside him, just to make him flinch. I'm not here to kill you, she continued. Not yet. First, you're going to give me what I want. Then, we'll see. The Emperor swallowed hard. For the first time, the mighty ruler of the Zenari Empire looked afraid. Ilara leaned closer, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. Never underestimate a human, she said. And then she smiled. The Emperor's face was pale as Ilara's words hung in the air. His crimson eyes darted to the weapon she held, then back to her steady, unflinching gaze. Rallick stayed at the door, too afraid to move. Ilara finally lowered the weapon a little, but didn't put it away. "Sit down," she ordered. The Emperor hesitated, then obeyed. He sank into his chair, his hands curling into fists. "You think this makes you powerful? Breaking into my chamber with a stolen gun? You're just a scared little creature." Ilara tilted her head. "That's an interesting choice of words, considering who's the one sitting down." The Emperor's jaw tightened. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. Dozens of guards were rushing toward them. Ilara calmly walked behind the Emperor, putting the weapon to the back of his head. "Tell them to stand down," she said softly. He sneered. "You won't shoot me. You humans always hesitate." Ilara leaned close to his ear. "You really want to test that theory?" The Emperor's breath caught. Then he shouted toward the door, "Stand down! Hold your positions!" The guards stopped outside the chamber, but did not leave. Ilara smirked. "That's better." But then the Emperor laughed bitterly. "Do you really think this changes anything? Look around you. You're still just one human. You'll never leave this ship alive." He turned slightly in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "You don't scare me. You can kill me now, and my soldiers will tear you to pieces before you take your next breath." Ilara said nothing for a long moment. She simply stared at him. Then she slowly holstered the weapon and walked to the center of the room. She turned to face him, her hands loose at her sides. "Go ahead," she said clearly. "Mock me, laugh at me, tell everyone how weak I am. That's what you all do, isn't it? That's what you've always done to humans. You look at us and see fragile bodies. You hear our voices and think they're soft. You see our machines and believe that's all we are. Tools, toys, nothing without them." The Emperor's smirk faded. Ilara stepped closer, her voice rising just enough to fill the chamber. "Do you want to know what makes humans strong?" she asked. "It's not our weapons, not our ships, not even our technology. It's this." She tapped her temple, "and this." She placed her hand over her chest. The Emperor scoffed, trying to hide his unease. "Words," he muttered. "Empty words from a doomed species." Ilara crouched slightly so her eyes were level with his. "Keep thinking that," she whispered. "It makes it so much easier for us to win." The door suddenly opened wider, and the crowd of guards and alien nobles outside began to gather, drawn by the voices inside. They pressed closer to the threshold, whispering among themselves. Ilara straightened and glanced toward them. Then she raised her voice, speaking so all could hear. "This is the mighty Emperor of the Zenari," she announced, pointing at him. "He claims humans are nothing. He says we are weak. But look at him now, sitting in his own chamber while a single unarmed human walks free right under his nose." The crowd murmured, confused, surprised. The Emperor stood abruptly, trying to take back control. "Enough of this. Guards, seize her now." He barked, but no one moved. They stared at Ilara, standing tall, fearless, and somehow in charge, and then at their Emperor, red-faced, sweating, and shouting in desperation. Ilara smiled faintly, feeling the shift in the room. "You've mocked me since the moment you captured me," she said calmly. "You disarmed me. You paraded me like a trophy. You thought chains and fear would break me." She paused, letting her words sink in. Big mistake. And before anyone could react, she took a sudden step forward, grabbed the Emperor by his collar, and slammed him back into his chair with one quick, shocking motion. Gasps rippled through the room. The Emperor glared up at her. But now there was real fear in his eyes. "You're going to call off the execution," Ilara said softly, just for him to hear. "You're going to order your men to stand down. And then you're going to watch what happens when a human fights back." The Emperor opened his mouth to protest, but she pressed the weapon gently against his chest. "You've already lost," she added. The crowd outside stayed silent, waiting, watching. The Emperor swallowed hard. Then finally he raised his trembling hand and waved at his guards. "Stand down," he croaked. "All of you, leave." One by one, the aliens began to back away, murmuring among themselves. Ilara stayed where she was, her eyes still locked on his. The mockery was over. Now, it was her turn. The guards slowly left the chamber, glancing nervously at Ilara as they backed away. Whispers filled the hall outside. Everyone could feel it. Something was about to happen. The Emperor sat stiffly in his chair, his crimson eyes still fixed on her. But his mocking smile was gone. Now he looked angry and afraid. Ilara stepped back from him and let her hand drop to her side, though she kept the weapon in her grip. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the ship's engines. "You think this makes you clever," the Emperor finally said, his voice low. "You've embarrassed me in front of my people. But you're still just one human. Do you really believe you can leave this ship alive?" Ilara tilted her head slightly and smiled. "I don't need to leave alive. I just need to finish what I started." Before he could answer, there was a sudden sharp hiss. The door behind her opened again. A squad of elite Zanari soldiers marched in, weapons raised. They wore black armor and moved in perfect formation. The Emperor stood quickly, his confidence returning when he saw them. "You see, human?" He sneered. "You can't win. You've already lost." Ilara didn't move. Her eyes flicked to the soldiers, then back to the Emperor. "We'll see." One of the soldiers barked. "Drop the weapon." "On your knees." Ilara slowly raised her hands, pretending to obey. But as the soldiers closed in, she suddenly moved. With lightning speed, she swung the weapon and fired, but not at the soldiers. Instead, she aimed at a light fixture on the ceiling. The room plunged into darkness as the lights exploded in a shower of sparks. The soldiers shouted in confusion. In the darkness, Ilara dropped to the floor and rolled toward the nearest soldier. She kicked his legs out from under him and grabbed his weapon as he fell. Another soldier fired blindly, but she was already moving again. Blasts of energy lit up the room, but none of them touched her. Rallick, still watching from the doorway, gasped. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Ilara moved like a shadow, striking fast and vanishing before anyone could react. She slammed one soldier into the wall, disarmed another, and ducked under a blast before tossing a weapon across the room. The Emperor backed against the wall, his eyes wide with shock. In less than a minute, the squad lay scattered on the floor, unconscious or groaning in pain. The room smelled of smoke and ozone. Ilara straightened and adjusted the stolen rifle in her hands. She was breathing hard now, but her eyes still burned with focus. "You really thought disarming me would stop me?" she said, her voice cold. "Big mistake." The Emperor stumbled backward, his hands raised. "What are you?" he demanded. "What kind of creature fights like this?" Ilara stepped closer, her boots crunching on broken glass. "A human," she said simply. Behind her, more guards were gathering in the hall, but none dared enter. Yet, they just stared at her through the smoke and sparks. She turned toward them and shouted, "Is this all you've got? Come on then." For a moment, no one moved. The Emperor's finest warriors, frozen by fear of a single human. Then Ilara lifted the rifle, fired a warning shot into the ceiling, and the crowd outside flinched back. That was the spark. The fear spread through them like fire through dry grass. The soldiers began to whisper among themselves. Some lowered their weapons. Others even took a step back. Ilara stood in the center of the room, surrounded by fallen soldiers and shattered walls, and raised her voice for all to hear. "This is what happens when you underestimate us," she declared. "This is what happens when you chain a human and think we're finished." Her words echoed down the corridor, and the watching aliens went silent. Rallick finally stepped into the room, his mouth open in awe. You're not just a soldier," he whispered. "You're something else." Ilara glanced at him, then back at the Emperor. "I'm just getting started." The Emperor swallowed hard. He could see it now. The spark had caught, and nothing could stop the fire she was about to unleash. The Emperor backed into the corner of the room, his eyes darting between the fallen soldiers and Alara. He was breathing hard now, his confident mask completely gone. Alara lowered the rifle and let it hang loosely in her hand. She didn't even seem worried anymore. "Why?" the Emperor finally whispered. "Why do you keep fighting? You're alone, outnumbered. You can't win." Alara tilted her head, almost amused. "That's what you think," she said softly. She reached into the torn sleeve of her uniform and pulled out a small, black chip, no bigger than a fingernail. The crowd outside gasped when they saw it glowing faintly blue in her hand. "What is that?" the Emperor demanded, his voice shaking. Alara smiled faintly. "Insurance." She pressed the chip against the side of her neck. A sharp hiss filled the air, and her body stiffened as tiny blue lights sparked under her skin, spreading from her neck down her arms and legs. The Emperor's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Alara opened her eyes, and for the first time, they glowed faintly, an eerie, bright silver. Rallick stumbled backward, whispering, She's not just human." Alara flexed her hands and clenched her fists. "You thought you disarmed me," she said calmly. "You thought you took everything away." Her wounds, which had bled just minutes ago, began to close. The bruises faded. Even the burn marks on her arms healed before their eyes. The Emperor backed away further, almost tripping over his own chair. "That's impossible," he muttered. "No human can—" Alara cut him off with a cold glare. "You don't know anything about humans." She moved toward him, faster now, her steps sharper, more confident. The blue lights under her skin pulsed with every heartbeat. When she reached the Emperor, she grabbed him by his armor and lifted him slightly off the floor with one hand. The crowd outside gasped again. Even the bravest soldiers dared not step inside. "You wanted to show the galaxy that humans are weak," Alara said quietly. "Instead, you're about to show them what happens when you push us too far." She threw the Emperor back into his chair. He stayed there, trembling. Then she turned to the guards outside and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "You see this?" she shouted, pointing at the Emperor. "This is the ruler who claimed humans were nothing. Look at him now. Look at what one human, can do to your mighty empire." Some of the soldiers in the hall shifted uncomfortably. A few even lowered their weapons. Alara didn't stop. "I was never just a prisoner. I was never just a soldier. Humans are never just anything. We fight, we adapt. And when you think you've beaten us—" She clenched her glowing fist, and the blue light surged brighter for a moment. "We get back up stronger." The Emperor's voice cracked as he tried to speak. You'll never escape." Alara looked at him with calm, glowing eyes. "I don't need to escape. I already own this room. And soon I'll own your ship." The Emperor froze. At that moment, the ship shook violently. A distant alarm wailed. Rallick's eyes widened as he peered out into the hall. From the viewports along the corridor, they could see flashes of light, human ships dropping out of hyperspace, surrounding the Zanari fleet. Alara just smiled. "That's my ride," she said softly. The spark she'd lit had become a flame. And now, it was about to become an inferno. The ship shook again, stronger this time. Alarms blared everywhere. The Zanari guards outside scrambled, shouting orders and rushing to their battle stations. But Alara stood calm, her silver eyes shining bright beneath the flickering lights. Flexed her fingers, feeling the nanobots humming beneath her skin, repairing and strengthening every muscle, every nerve. Pain faded like a distant memory. Strength flowed through her like electricity. The Emperor stumbled into the room, panic on his face. "They've come, the humans. They've returned with a fleet." "You cannot stop them," Alara smiled coldly. "I don't need to stop them. I'm here to join them." With a sudden burst of speed, she dashed to the control panel and began tapping commands. The ship's systems responded to her touch. But the Zanari technology resisted. Fighting her, the Emperor lunged forward, trying to grab her arm. "You will not take my ship." She spun away, striking him with a powerful blow that sent him crashing into a console. Sparks flew. Ilara's voice rang out, steady and loud. "Prepare for boarding. Open the hangar bays. Disable all defense turrets." Outside, the human fleet began to fire their weapons, striking the Zanari ships with precision. The battle was fierce, but with Ilara inside, the humans had the upper hand. Rallick ran into the room, wide-eyed. "Captain, they're ready to storm." "The ship! The Zanari are panicking," Ilara nodded. "Good, let them come. This ship is now human territory." She moved to the ship's weapon controls, overriding alien security protocols. One by one, the powerful cannons hummed to life, aimed at the enemy fleet. The Emperor, bruised and beaten, lay on the floor, watching helplessly. Ilara stood tall, her voice steady. "They disarmed me. They chained me. They thought that would stop a human." She pressed the firing button. A blast of energy shot out, destroying an enemy fighter before it could attack. "Big mistake," she said quietly. "Because I am not just a soldier. I am the ultimate weapon." The Zanari soldiers outside faltered as their own ship turned against them. Chaos spread. Ilara's eyes gleamed with power and determination. The humans were coming. The galaxy was about to learn what it truly meant to face humanity unleashed. The ship rocked violently as explosions rocked its hull. Alarms screamed everywhere, warning of incoming human boarding teams. Zanari soldiers rushed to block the corridors, but panic was spreading fast. Ilara moved through the ship's control. Sent her like a shadow, her body still glowing faintly with the nanobot energy. She was calm, focused, and deadly. "Rallick," she said, "help me open the hangar bay doors. We need to get the humans inside fast." Rallick nodded and worked quickly, fingers flying over the alien controls. With a hiss, the massive hangar doors slid open, revealing rows of human soldiers boarding the ship. The humans flooded inside, weapons ready, taking control of corridors and stations. The Zanari fought back, but many were frozen with fear. Their own flagship was falling to one human captain. Ilara strode to the command deck. The Emperor was there, trapped in a force field prison. "You took my ship," he growled, "but you won't keep it." Ilara smiled. "I already have." She tapped commands, sealing the ship's defenses and cutting off the Emperor's communication. The humans swarmed in, securing every system. Outside, the Zanari fleet was in chaos, confused and leaderless without their flagship. Ilara looked out at the stars and smiled. This is just the beginning. The galaxy will remember the day humans returned not as prisoners, but as conquerors. The Emperor glared at her, defeated. "Let this be a warning," Ilara said quietly. "Never underestimate a human, especially one who has nothing left to lose." Ilara stood on the bridge of the captured Zanari ship. The stars stretched endlessly outside the windows, but inside, the air was thick with tension. The Zanari Emperor was brought before her, guarded and defeated. She raised her voice so the Sindhu entire ship and the enemy fleet outside could hear. "This is the Zanari Emperor," she announced. "He thought humans were weak. He thought we were nothing without our weapons. But today, he kneels before a human. Today, he learns what it means to be wrong." The alien soldiers exchanged shocked glances. Many lowered their weapons. Ilara turned to the Emperor. "Sign the surrender. End this war. Show the galaxy that you accept humans as equals." The Emperor glared at her, his pride burning, but he saw no choice. Slowly, with trembling hands, he signed the peace treaty. The Zanari soldiers bowed their heads. The war was over. Ilara looked at Rallick beside her. "This is only the start. Humans will never bow again." Her words echoed through the galaxy dot, and somewhere far away, Humans across star systems celebrated. The legend of Ilara Vos, the woman who became the ultimate weapon, was born. The ship drifted quietly through the stars now. The battle was over. The humans had won. Ilara stood on the bridge, looking out at the galaxy beyond. The glow beneath her skin was fading now, but her silver eyes still held the fire of victory. Zanari Emperor was gone, taken away in chains, just as he had once done to her. His fleet had surrendered. His soldiers no longer looked at humans as prey. Now they looked at them with fear and respect. Behind her, Rallick spoke softly. They'll tell stories about this. About you. Ilara didn't turn. Let them, she said, but make sure they tell it right. Rallick tilted his head. And how is that? She finally looked at him, her face calm but determined. Tell them humans don't give up. Tell them humans don't break. Tell them we are the weapon. Far across the galaxy, broadcasts carried her words to every world, human and alien alike. On distant planets, children repeated her name in awe, Ilara Vos. On conquered colonies, enslaved beings whispered it like a prayer, the human who rose. Alone. And on Earth, crowds filled the streets, watching her message play across every screen. This is Captain Ilara Vos. Humanity does not kneel. Not today, not ever. She stood there on the bridge, silent and strong. As the stars shifted around her, the legend was born that day of the human who lost everything, became the ultimate weapon, and made the galaxy remember the power of flesh and will. And as the lights of Earth appeared in the distance, Ilara smiled faintly and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning."